Tove Jansson, Hayao Miyazaki, Bruna, Barklem. These are all artists that have inspired me to create the kind of art that I make today. A lot of artists start their creative journey because they looked at other artists, their work, and it sparked something in them. Whether this was a show, a painting, a book, or an illustration on social media. This piece of art made you feel something so profound that you yourself felt a need to start creating. I want to be able to do that too, Moomins. In this video I'll be talking about finding inspiration in other artists. I'll be creating a piece inspired by other people, their work, while I also share with you how I used other artists and their work as inspiration for my own creativity. I'll also be talking a little bit about this challenge called Artfight, and I'll be giving you other resources that will hopefully help you find inspiration more easily. If this is the first video of mine that you're watching, hi, my name is Aiko. I'm an independent illustrator based in the Netherlands. On social media, I love to share my creative journey, and the question I often get asked is where I get my inspiration from or where I get my creative ideas from, which is a very good question, of course, and one I would like to answer in depth, which inspired me to create this video series, which I call Finding Inspiration. This is the second part I've made so far. In the previous video about finding inspiration, I go more into finding inspiration within your environment and how curiosity can stimulate creative ideas. But for this video, we'll be focusing on our fellow artists and how they can inspire us. So without further ado, let's begin. I feel like every artist has their own few artists or pieces of media that have played a huge role within their creative journey. Artists that have inspired their style, the types of art that you end up gravitating towards wanting to make, and the reason why you want to start creating in the first place. For me, my love for drawing started when I was a child and discovered that anime and manga existed. In my early drawings, you can clearly see a lot of anime influences in there, and I remember really liking the shapes that were often explored within this style. The big eyes or the certain way that hair was often drawn, a bit more pointy, and the more simple face shapes were quite easy to interpret and try to recreate. And I drew like this for years. Anime was my main inspiration for a long time, and I was mostly straight up copying what I saw, which, to be fair, I was unknowingly making master studies. I was analyzing these pieces of art and trying to understand and recreate them as best as I could, in the hopes to understand the style better and in the future be able to create something by myself without the help of someone else, their work. Eventually, as I got older, my interests broadened and I started to take inspiration from other places. And the more my interests broadened, the more unique my art style became to me. And of course, over time, interests like shift and evolve, and some aspects that played a huge role in the past for my work are now more in the background, while other things that inspire me became a lot more important. Take, for example, Fiep Westendorp. She's a Dutch illustrator and is best known for her series Jip Janneke, Pluk van de Pettenflat, Vloddertje, Pim and Pom, and Tokkie and Sippie. I grew up reading these books, though I remember not being a particular huge fan of her work, as her characters didn't have anime eyes. However, as I've now become a picture book illustrator myself, I have grown to really love her work. I find it so impressive how she was able to create such expressive yet simple character designs, and I also love how she plays with perspective and composition within a 2D space. So when I discovered that there was an exhibition in the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam that was showcasing her work for a limited time, I really had to go. Seeing the drawings up close made me appreciate her work even more. She worked during a time where digital drawing and editing weren't the thing yet, or at least not as common as they are now. So to see how she used traditional mediums to create effects that we now do digitally is so interesting to see. Using whiteout to create harsh lines for the hair, and how she and her client planned for typography, for example. Oh, I love these. During the day it was a bit too busy for me to feel comfortable drawing there, so I decided to pick up this book about her work so I could keep dissecting her art style back at home. Another thing that I love about her work that I didn't know before this exhibition was how much she used mixed media. Not just sticking to one type of art supply, just mixing and matching. This is something that I have discovered in recent years that I personally also really love to implement in my work. It's such a freeing and fun feeling to do. It really makes me feel like anything is possible and kind of forces you to be able to think outside of the box. And that's how I got the idea for this drawing. Which is also the perfect segue for me to start talking about Artfight. If this is the first time you're hearing about Artfight, Artfight is an annual month-long event held during the month of July, in which people make art for each other. You can upload your own original designs, and if people like them, they can make a drawing of said character and post it to receive points. It's a big community event that celebrates art together, and it gave me a very open and free feeling to start exploring and have fun. Mind you, this is an oversimplification of Artfight though. If you're curious about the details, I would suggest you either go to their website or look up some videos here on YouTube that go into the rules of Artfight directly. Either way, I decided to join this event this year because I saw a bunch of people share their drawings on social media. I was seeing so much cool art that I got curious enough to check it out for myself. And the more I looked through the website, the more amazing artists and original characters I stumbled upon. And I could feel the inspiration bubbling up within me. I saved a bunch of characters that I wanted to draw and went on exploring. Some characters reminded me of a certain style that I thought would be fun to try out and emulate myself. While with other characters I already had a style in mind and was looking for a character that would be a perfect fit for this style. This was genuinely so much fun. Each character felt like a little adventure in and of itself. The added bonus was that I didn't have to come up with ideas from scratch. The character already existed. In some cases they came with some background information or even a story that I could work off of. And this can work wonders for creativity. As you might have experienced before, starting out your drawing process with the unlimited possibilities can be a little bit intimidating and lead to art block. We've all stared at the blank page within our sketchbook, itching to draw but not knowing where to start. But starting with a certain set of rules or limitations can really help as a great starting off point to help you narrow down your focus. In this case, I found a character by this user called Unknowntoast. I saw their character was made out of paper and almost immediately got the idea to try and physically recreate them out of lined paper, just like Fiep had done in some of her work. Of course, I wanted to add my own touches to it and not one-on-one recreate the original drawing. So I started sketching and made the character a bit more cat-like than the original. I really like to draw cats, so I wanted to bring this interest of mine a little bit more to the forefront. By doing this, I altered the proportions of the character and added a tail. I also thought it would be fun to make them hold a really big pencil. Because I edited the proportions, this character in my head was now a lot smaller than the original seemed to look like, and I thought it would be a fun idea if my drawing were notebook size, as if they could have climbed out of a notebook. I decided to make the pencil comically big because of this reason as well. I wanted to really highlight the physical elements of this character design, making it out of paper, having the character hold the pencil, making the general theme of the piece traditional art and whimsical creativity. In the end, I ended up using acrylic markers from Ohu, cardstock paper, lined paper, colored pencils and Mod Podge glue. And this is the final result. Isn't it cute? I'm so happy with it. When it comes to taking inspiration from other artists, it's of course important to keep in mind how far you'll go with it. If you're learning, making master studies, for example, it is completely fine to try and recreate the original piece that you're studying as best as you can. You can genuinely learn a lot from this, and it's something that artists have been doing for centuries. However, in this case, do be upfront that this is not your original creation. If you're going to share these studies, be sure to credit the original artist. The thing is that sometimes the line between copying and taking inspiration from can be a little bit blurry, and also this line is different for everyone. If you've made something inspired by another artist and you're a bit uncomfortable or unsure if you've strayed too close to copying or taking inspiration, I would suggest you either keep the drawing for yourself or get in contact with the original artist if that's possible and ask them what they think. Of course, respect their opinion. If they find that you strayed too close to their original piece and they don't want you to share it, respect that. And next time you can try to make the drawing more into your own thing. Things like this can happen, and honestly, that's okay. Sometimes you unconsciously take inspiration from a piece that strays a bit too close to the original, and yeah, that's okay. Just try to be as open and upfront about it as you can. I also feel like it's different if you take heavy inspiration from an artist that's no longer around in comparison with an artist that's still thriving today. There is a lot of art online that takes heavy inspiration from Alfons Mucha, for example. Sorry if I mispronounced that name. And all these works are beautiful pieces on their own, but they do still wear their original inspiration heavy on their sleeve. I'm taking him as an example because as of recently, I've also taken a lot of inspiration from his work. I've been studying his art and taking certain elements that he frequently uses and try to implement them in my own way. Stuff like his compositions or his line work, where the most outer line tends to be a little bit more thick than the lines on the inside of the object that he's drawing, or the certain way he uses shapes, how these curved lines move onto straight lines. These things by themselves can turn into original attributes in your own work. That is, of course, if you combine them with other forms of inspiration. A certain curl or the thickness of a line isn't necessarily tied to one artist. And of course, it can be recognizable, but that all depends on what you do with it and how many elements of someone, their style you take and implement at the same time, if that makes sense. Studying different artists that you like, combining all the different elements that you like, can in and of itself turn into something very original to you. But do keep in mind, this is not something that just happens overnight. And quite frankly, you might not even notice that it's happening. However, all these small little elements combined will help you find and create your own style. Having said that, I do want to mention that I'm personally of the mindset that you shouldn't focus too much on trying to find your own style. I'm of the belief that your style will find you. Limiting yourself to only drawing faces a certain way, especially when you're still learning and trying to get a grasp of your drawing skills, can be detrimental to your artistic growth. From my own experience, I have noticed that people often say that I have a very distinct style, even though that's something I don't necessarily see myself. Of course, there are things that I gravitate towards doing, things that I've picked up over the years, small little tricks here and there that I really like to implement into my drawings. Though also with this, these things can change over time. So what I would like to suggest to you, if this is something that you're struggling with, is to try and not to focus too much on sticking to one thing, even though it might look like your favorite artists are. The style your favorite artists are sticking to is most likely a combination of multiple different inspiration sources and things that they have learned to implement over time, and these things come naturally to them after having learned and developed their skill for years and years. And of course, you won't be seeing all the drawings in which they are exploring new inspiration sources or trying to figure out what works for them. And even then, they still might be exploring, and they might have a secret sketchbook that they use in which their work looks very different from the work that they usually put out into the world. I feel like there's never an end to where you have finally found your thing and just stick to it. Eventually you'll get tired of it and want to try out new things. So allow yourself to explore a little and have fun. When I think about artists that inspire me, I often think about my artistic mutuals. I feel so lucky to have been able to connect with so many artists in real life. That's why, instead of this being a sponsored segment, I'd like to dedicate a little bit of time to promote one of my mutuals, their creative project. Mind you, they did not ask me to do this. I saw them post about this on social media, which gave me the idea to want to highlight projects from other independent creators here on my channel and use my platform to create community. I am very grateful for the platform that I have grown over this past year, and I want to share that with people. So yeah. Today I want to highlight Club Soko, which is a really fun puzzle game in which you play as Maud, a graffiti artist who's trying to navigate her way through this nightclub in order to tag as many walls as possible. While working your way through the guests at the nightclub and around the bouncers, you'll discover that there's more to Club Soko that meets the eye, which means secrets. So if you like puzzle games, I would highly recommend you try this game out. I personally had a great time playing it in the evenings after I was trying to wind down from work. It's the perfect mix between shutting your brain off and using your brain to solve little puzzles. It was a lot of fun. Plus there are a lot of achievements that you can collect, which, as someone who enjoys achievement hunting, this is right up my alley. The game is available on Nintendo, Android, iOS, Steam, and Xbox. You will be able to find all the links in the description down below, so please go check it out if you're interested and know that you will be supporting an indie dev by doing so. Thank you! I would like to share some tips and tricks and resources that I use that can help you find new artists to get inspired by. First one, art books and books in general. Art books not only often contain a lot of art that you can't find on the internet, but they also often contain little bits of information about the artist, their work process, and the art pieces in general. Plus, they are a great way to support artists, and in return, you get valuable pieces of information and a collection of art, all for yourself. Some of my personal favorite art books are from the Ghibli series. I personally only have Howl's Moving Castle, but I know the ones for Kiki's Delivery Service and Spirited Away are also really good. I have this one that I bought a few years back at an art festival, which is a collection of animal sketches by Armel Gourmet. I also love these few picture books that I have, and I feel like picture books are an underrated form of art. I say that as someone who's trying to make picture books myself, but they often contain such gorgeous illustrations and they're relatively easy to find within a lot of bookstores, not that expensive, so don't sleep on picture books. They are great resources for art. I also have these two children's books by Jill Barklem and Rien Poortvliet that I also adore. You can probably tell if you're familiar with my work that I take a lot of inspiration from these. And as a special mention, I want to mention On Writing by Stephen King. This isn't necessarily about illustration and more so focuses on writing. However, there are a lot of pieces of information about creative mindset and just doing the thing, pushing yourself to keep creating, which I really connected with, so I would highly recommend this one as well. And another tip actually is to look at artists or different types of things that interest you outside of the medium that you prefer working with. What I mean by this is, say for example, you mostly focus on painting. By looking at sculptors, graphic designers, authors, you can also find so much unique pieces of inspiration there. Before I became an illustrator, I studied graphic design for a while, and I still take a lot of inspiration from the things that I've learned back then and implement them into my work today. An example that's coming to mind right now is how different compositions from, say, a movie poster can be in comparison to those you often see within paintings. Taking these different pieces of inspiration and implementing them into my art and seeing where they fit best can really help your work stand out or give it an entirely different feeling. Another tip is to go to events related to the kind of art that you like. There are illustration and animation focused events such as Lightbox, On the Sea, Playgrounds, the art department. At these events you will find a lot of artists there talking about their work, showing their process, and they are great resources for inspiration. However, if there aren't any events like that near you, you can also go to anime and comic conventions. or local art markets. And lastly, look up things and try to follow your curiosity. If you see a picture book in the store that you like, look at the publisher, look at the illustrator, look them up online, see what other works they might have published. Who knows what you might discover that could be new inspiration sources for you. Same goes for movies and series. Look at the credits at who is making the art that you love and look them up. You'll not only gain industry knowledge by doing this, but you also might be able to find your new favorite artist that could have a huge impact on your work moving forward. Yeah. If you have some tips or tricks that you would like to share on how you find inspiration in other artists and how you try to implement these pieces into your own work, feel free to share them. I'm very curious who your favorite artists are and how these have impacted your style. If you want to know how I take inspiration from my environment, which is also a very broad topic, you can watch a video that I made covering this right here. And if you'd like to take a peek into my sketchbooks, I have multiple videos of that on my channel, which you can watch through the playlist right here. Either way, I hope you liked this video and that it was somewhat helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye!